so much for the wonderful introduction. Uh, and thank you all for being here. I think it's the first time that IREX is happening in Hyderabad. And looking at the attendance, I think that we are going to have it pretty soon, every single year, every single quarter probably. So just to reintroduce myself, my name is Girish Mohile. I represent CMB regional centers. I'm based in Mumbai, and I take care of the India market. And quickly to shift gears, we just spoke about Dubai. Now we are going to shift gears and the continents as well. We are going to talk about US. So just a show of hands, how many of you have already heard about the concept of EB5 visa? Have you heard about it? Oh, a lot of people. So just to reintroduce that concept, EB5 visa is an investment-based visa to get a permanent residency for the US. So it's one of the tools or one of the options to get green card for the US via investment. Now, when I say investment, of course, it's an investment of US dollars 800,000. That is the minimum investment amount. However, it's not a traditional investment. So it can't be like I am buying a property in the US or I'm setting up my own business and then I will be able to get that green card. It doesn't work like that. The investment of 800,000 US dollars needs to happen in a qualifying project. And that is where CMB regional centers come into the picture. So once you invest 800,000 US dollars into a qualifying project, who is going to get the green card? It's the main applicant, the spouse, and unmarried children below 21. So all of these people will be able to get a green card or permanent residency for the US once you make that qualified investment. Now, to give you a brief background about CMB as to what we do, CMB was first established in 1997. So we are actually one of the oldest active regional centers in EB5 space. And what is our duty? The duty is to act as a fiduciary on behalf of the investors. So our role is to ensure that the investment which comes through you is going into a project which will not just qualify you for green card, but to do that, there are a couple of requirements. Now, what are the requirements? The requirement is that each investment of 800,000 US dollars need to create 10 full-time American jobs. And second is, once those jobs are created, you're also able to show clear source of funds which will go into that particular project. Now, it's like any other business where you're investing, and once you invest, there is going to be a construction, the construction is going to be complete, and the jobs are going to get created. So, Mr. Patrick F. Hogan, he's the founder and CEO of CMB Regional Centers, and there are a couple of things which he pioneered when EB5 was just starting back in the 90s. One of them was to create the loan model. So the flow which I just mentioned, and I will also describe in detail further, there is a concept of loan model, which means that the initial investment which goes in should qualify for EB5 via an equity investment, and there will be a pool of funds. So you are not going to be alone in that particular investment. There are going to be other investors just like yourself from across the globe. It can be from India, China, any other country. And all of those funds will be pooled into a single entity and will go out as a loan towards the development of that project. So again, CMB is not a developer, but we act as a fiduciary and we work directly with those developers in qualifying those projects for EB5 investment. Ms. Noreen Hogan, she is the president of CMB Regional Centers, and she takes care of the day-to-day operations of the company currently. Now, these are some of the stats. While you get into the process of EB5 visa, while you're interested in EB5 visa, you're going to talk to a lot of people, a lot of regional centers, attorneys, of course. One of the major components while that due diligence is being conducted is all these stats as to where the company stands in terms of their experience and track record. So in all these 27 years of existence, we have had 6,300 investors. Now, when I say investors, it does not count the family members. It's just that one single application. So if you include the family members, this number will blow up. But when it comes to that single application, the sheer number of 6,300 investors who have chosen to invest with CMB to get their permanent residency in the US. Now, this process is a step-by-step process. So it's a milestone-based process. You first invest, then the first approval comes in. That's known as I-526E approval. So the first petition goes in, USCIS, which is the adjudicating authority, is going to adjudicate that case and make that first approval of I-526E. Once that happens, you will be in the US on your conditional residency of 2 years, and once that happens, you make another application of I-829. That is when you are requesting for the permanent green card. So if you look over here, we have 6,300 plus investors from 103 different countries, including India, out of which 5,400 plus investors have already received that first approval which USCIS provides. Now moving on to the I-829 approvals, we already have 2,400 plus successful I-829 approvals, meaning they have received their permanent green card in the US. And on top of that, the good part is the 800,000 worth of investment, you can get the return of your capital after a specific period of time. So once the jobs are created, the construction is complete, we have no business to keep your funds with us. So we are going to repay those funds back to you, and around 2,600 plus investors have successfully received their capital back. That's one of the highlights. So these are some of the areas that we have functioned in. So just to give you a background, CMB actually stands for California Military Base or Closed Military Base. The reason why this name stuck with us, or we chose this name, is because the initial projects that we conducted were in those closed military bases, which were World War II era military bases, and those were being shut, and there were construction activities or developmental activities which were undertaken, and CMB raised EB5 capital in those specific areas. That's how the name came into being. So you will see in the western region in California, mostly we have all the projects, but we have expanded and we have projects in other areas as well. So currently we have more than 85 plus EB5 partnerships in different areas within the US. So what is the priority which an investor is looking at while you decide to go for EB5 visa? First, of course, is the green card, and second, as I mentioned, is the return of your investment. So the 800,000 investment that you make, you're expecting the return of that capital. However, we receive so many queries where investors ask that since this is an investment-based visa, what about the return on my investment? How much percentage of return am I going to get if I invest in these kind of projects? The answer to that is, when you're expecting to invest in EB5 visa, the expected return on your investment is very marginal. Because as the saying goes, the risk-reward ratio, the higher the risk, the higher is going to be the reward. So usually when you invest with a regional center investment, the return on your investment is going to be very low across the board, not just with CMB. Now this is the loan model which I was talking about. So the investor stands at the left side over here. Each investor ends up becoming a limited partner. So they are investing 800,000 US dollars, and in the middle you will find CMB limited partnership. So there are different groups which are going to have 50, 60, 99 investors depending on the size of that project that we undertake. And each of the investor becomes a limited partner and becomes a part of that CMB limited partnership or that group. Now this group is in the business of lending funds to the developer, because mostly you will find that regional center projects are construction-based projects, meaning they're constructing something. It can be a residential development, it can be a 5-star hotel, it can be a resort, or it can be an industrial logistics facility. So once the loan goes to the borrower, they are going to utilize that for construction purposes, and as and when they utilize those funds for construction purposes, that means that the jobs are getting created. So what is the minimum number which I quoted? It's 10 per investor. So regional center has to ensure that each investment worth of 800,000 US dollars is going to create at least 10 full-time jobs. So it can be more than that as well. So sometimes the project can create or project around 20, 25 jobs per investor. Now, once the construction is complete, what's going to happen next? The project is either going to be sold or refinanced, and those funds which now the borrower has are going to be repaid back into that partnership and will be repaid back to the investor. So that's the flow of your funds when it comes to your EB5 investment. Now this is a very important slide. CMB as a regional center is proud to have more than 50 plus employees within the US. There are other representatives as myself. So I'm based in India. There are other representatives in China, Taiwan, Switzerland, and other parts of the globe as well. But just in the US, we stand at 50 plus staff members. And this is very important because you will find regional centers who basically have a very low number of employees doing multiple jobs. But we have a separate legal team, we have a separate compliance team, we have a separate project team who just conducts due diligence on the projects which the investor is going to invest in. So that is very important as to what is the size and whether the regional center that you are investing in is an institutional company or a family business or some small company working out of a garage. Now, out of all those 85 projects that we have worked, we have successfully received 78 approvals. Rest are still in the queue because USCIS usually takes some time to approve those projects. So we have 78 projects. I can assure you that there are a lot of regional centers who do not have such numbers. They probably had 10 or 20 projects under their belt. Maybe the approval rate is going to be 100%, but we have a 100% track record for all these 78 projects, out of which 60 plus projects we have been able to receive I-829 approval, meaning that the investors who have gone into these projects, they have received successfully their permanent residency or permanent green card. 50 of them have already seen the return of capital, meaning the investment which they have done, they have been able to receive those funds back. And whatever I'm saying is audited. Now, CMB has been one of the thought leaders in this particular area. As per the new law, so we are going to talk about all these aspects of EB5 as the day goes. There is going to be a panel discussion as well. So there is a new law which is in place, Reforms and Integrity Act of 2022. Now, that law has introduced a requirement for all the regional centers to conduct periodic audits. But this is something CMB has been doing right from 2014 for all the partnerships dating back to 2000s. So we were involved in all these audits even before it became a requirement per se. Now, we talked about CMB regional centers, but I would like to just give you some details regarding the developer that we are currently working with. We currently have two projects, Group 86 and Group 89, and incidentally, in both of these projects, Hillwood is the developer or the borrower. So Hillwood actually is a construction arm of the Perot family. So if you would have looked at some political history of US, Mr. Ross Perot Sr. actually ran for president's election back in the 90s, and he holds the record of getting highest number of votes as an independent candidate. His son, Ross Perot Jr., he founded Hillwood as the construction arm of the Perot family in 1988. And this is the track record between Hillwood and CMB. So out of those 85 plus projects, we have worked with them, wherein Hillwood is the developer or the borrower in those CMB partnerships 41 times. So there are 41 partnerships where Hillwood is the borrower. Out of those, they have successfully repaid back 25 loans. Now these numbers, if you compare, these numbers are second to none. You won't find these kind of stats anywhere else. And these are the stats related to the investors. So just like I showed you some numbers CMB-wise, these are the numbers where CMB investors have invested in a Hillwood project, 1900 plus. Around 400 plus have received their I-829 approval, which is the permanent green card, and 600 plus have already received the return of capital. So there is a track record and evidence that Hillwood as a borrower has been impeccable in terms of their construction, their repayment of loan, both in terms of interest and the loan payment as well. They have never defaulted on any of the quarterly payments. They have never defaulted on the loan repayment as well. They have always paid on time. Now, I will just briefly run through the current project that we have. Group 89, Hillwood City Creek BTS. BTS means built to suit. So we are expected to raise around 79.2 million US dollars. So that counts to around 99 units. So this is actually construction of an industrial logistics facility in Colorado. That's the state in the middle of the US, in Thornton. So Thornton is a suburb of Denver. It's around 10 to 15 miles north of Denver. So what's going to happen over here? So they are going to construct a 525,000 square feet of industrial logistics freezer cooler facility for a tenant, which is already pre-decided. It's a Fortune 500 top 35 retail tenant. The lease period for this particular project, once the construction is complete, is already pre-decided. So there is a lease agreement in place. The tenure for that lease is 240 months. So it's a huge timeline. So once the construction gets completed, it has already begun in Q2 of 2023. It's set to be complete at the end of this year. Once the construction is complete, this tenant is going to occupy the space for another 240 months. So we know that the cash flow is not an issue. On top of that, they have also committed to buy this particular facility once the construction is complete. So the question arises as to how the repayment is going to happen for each investor. It's crystal clear. First, the construction is going to get complete, meaning that all the jobs which are projected, I'm going to show you the job numbers. Those jobs are going to be created. Once the construction is complete, a tenant is going to occupy the space for 240 months. And once the construction is complete, they have also promised to buy that particular property. So Hillwood typically, just to give you a background, Hillwood is not into constructing and retaining that asset. They are more into constructing and selling. That's their modus operandi. So even in this project, once the construction is going to be complete, they are going to transfer the membership rights or the ownership rights to the tenant, get the repayment or get the payment from them, and the repayment of loan is going to happen right away. So this is the location. The vacancy rate in this particular area is less than 10%. So usually when you're looking at any industrial logistics facility, one of the important things is whether there is any demand for that particular asset class, irrespective of whether it's an industrial logistics facility or any project that you're looking at. One of the main things to look at is whether there is a demand for that asset class while you intend to invest through that particular project for your EB-5 visa. Why? Because even if the jobs are completed through construction, if the sale or refinance does not happen, if the demand is dropping, then how is the developer going to repay the funds back into the partnership? So that becomes an important point. So the vacancy rate over here is less than 10%. So we know that there is a demand. So they are doing a joint venture. So Hillwood is entering into a joint venture with Stream Realty Partners. They have years of experience in this particular region, and they are into construction as well. But as an investor, we are focused on the relationship between CMB as a lender and Hillwood as the borrower. Now coming to job creation. As mentioned earlier, each investor needs to create 10 full-time jobs through their investment. But if you look over here, it is estimated that each investor will have at least 17.7 jobs through their investment. So there is a job buffer of 76%. Now, there are projects which might have a higher buffer or lower buffer, but what is important is it needs to be higher than at least 10, so that you know that there is a cushion when it comes to the job creation. And this qualifies under a targeted employment area. That is the reason that the investment amount is at 800,000 US dollars. So if the project falls outside of the targeted employment area, then the investment amount actually is $1,050,000 US dollars. But you will mostly find that all the regional centers have the lower investment amount, so they will either qualify for a TEA or a rural. And this is the total project cost. It's costing 259 million US dollars. You will see that developer has their own equity of 24%. The EB-5 is going to contribute around 30%, and there is a senior construction loan of 46%. Now, if you see over here, the senior construction loan is approved for 172 million, out of which they are just utilizing 119. So the next question which arises is, if in case CMB is unable to raise full 99 investors, then what happens to the project? Will the project stop? Then the answer is no, because they already have arranged, they have their own equity, they also have an approved loan much more higher than the loan amount which they are trying to utilize for this particular project. And these are the forward-looking numbers, these are projections. So obviously the total cost is 259 million US dollars. They are going to sell it off for an amount much higher than that. And of course there is going to be a cash flow which will be profitable for everyone involved. Now, what guarantees the protection of the investment? So when it comes to any EB-5 visa, it's an at-risk investment. We are going to discuss about that in detail as well. That is one of the basic criteria for EB-5 investment, that each EB-5 investment has to be having a certain element of risk. But what can be ensured is that the project gets complete. So there is a completion guarantee backed with this particular project, which means that the developer is guaranteeing that the construction is going to happen, and that guarantee is in written form. So it is either given to the senior lender or it is given to the CMB partnership. Either ways, the benefit of that is going to trickle down to the EB-5 investor. There are other collaterals involved as well, but I won't take much time. We have a booth outside over here. When you enter, it's right in the front. I would be more than happy to help you with any questions that you may have. Thank you so much for your time. And again, thanks IREX for arranging this wonderful event. Thank you so much.